Andrew and Ed, I will hand things over to you. You should be able to share your screens, but let me know if you have any problems with that.
Great, thank you. I'll share my video as well, so I'm not just a transient voice. Ed's probably looking a bit aghast. I normally have a big beard, and I shaved it off a couple of days ago, so I feel very bare at the moment. So I'll just share my screen first. Try this. Is that working okay for everyone? Can people see that okay?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. So, as Meg mentioned, I work at the University of St Andrews. Really brief bit of information about St Andrews. So we're one of the oldest universities in the world, founded well over 600 years ago now. We have around 9,000 FTEs-ish. They were given the option whether they wanted to be taught remotely or whether they wanted to come to the town for this semester, and most did return to the town. And then we had a mix, or currently having a mix of socially distanced teaching and online. So our actual collections at the university, again, been collecting for over 600 years. So we do have over 2 million photographs, rare books, museum objects, and archive material. I thought it was 1 million, then I thought it was 1.5, and then I just got told earlier it was 2. So I think it's over 2 million now. And art collections are used quite extensively in teaching at the university. So we do quite a lot of humanities subjects. A lot of a lot of classics and medieval history, plus things like biology and geology as well, where they have quite a lot of rock samples in our museums, plus even things like English literature usually visit our reading room to look at rare books, because we've got quite an extensive collection of them. And that was just a wee photo difference there between, I think that was taken last year, and then this one here was, I don't know, I think it's about 80 years ago or something now. Things don't really change that much at the university. So I'm here to talk to you about object-based teaching virtually with our collections. Probably about May time, we kind of knew that this dual delivery of teaching, some call it blended learning, was approaching. And we were tasked with looking at approaches in order to try and facilitate this with our collection objects. And the goal, as you can see there, it was really simple. It was to try and get as close to that sort of tactile, interactive experience that you get when you're learning with objects. So it's never going to be as good as turning up our reading room and getting your hands on, a 650-year-old manuscript, or being able to sniff the binding of a rare book or whatever. But it's trying to approach that interactive experience to make it as fulfilling to the students as we really can. So the way we went about this was we've taken 2 approaches. So the short term was that we only had a few months to get things a few months to get things going. So we looked at some off-the-shelf tools, all using IIIF, because we thought, well, we've already got this small infrastructure in place, and it'd be the best way, obviously, the interoperability part of IIIF, to actually use different tools with this, plus some development work for an amazing product that Ed will talk about in a wee while. So we sort of picked things that probably everyone's aware of already, and sort of put them together into a roadmap and said, actually, here's what we're going to do for September. And I presented that, I think there was a Prezi for that back in May, saying, here's some tools that you can pull together. And now this is sort of my presentation is going back and saying, here's what we did, which things worked, which things didn't, that kind of thing. In the long term, we're looking at investigating actually best practice for all of this. So we haven't had really time to look at that too much, but we did employ a student group. So we've got these sort of student intern groups that do sort of research investigations, and we employed them to actually look at best practice with all of this, with our collection system, usability, how people want to be taught online with our collections, all of that. So the scope of this was basically anything that uses the university's special collections or museum collections. So there were other things out there. So we have a geology department that have their own massive mineral collection. And we thought we need just to stick the scope for now to things that we were fully in control of and that were accessioned into our special collections and museum. We'll be possibly extending that going forward very soon. System-wise, I haven't included any sort of really fancy diagram with this. So basically, at the moment, we have a system for our museum collection, we have a system for our photographic collection, we have a system for our archive collection. Then we have, I think, Islandora as well somewhere for some digital surrogates. And basically, we're kind of in the midst of a consolidation project, getting all of this stuff into one place, which meant it was a bit strange this semester for the students, because all the stuff that we digitized just went into our photographic collection called KEMU, because that was the most enterprise ready to handle IIIF. So basically, they were accessing our photographic collection to see manuscripts or museum objects and that kind of thing. I'll be sharing links to my our test server at the moment, because we're almost, I think, as of next week or the week after, our photographic collection will be rebranded as collections, and then so I'm using the test server for that, so you can see that rather than constantly bombarded with our photographic collection. Our next stop is looking at migrating in our archive collection as well, possibly at the start of the new year. So there's a few areas to cover here. Some have got demos. I'd quite like to talk with Ed about exhibit for a bit longer than some of the other ones, so I'll try and rattle through some of these. So the first thing we looked at was basically for this tangible experience for the students was 3D. I mean, what else is that sort of the thing that immediately comes to mind with the things is 3D scanning things and making them available online. So we bought a 3D scanner, and I'd never used one before, and I haven't thankfully had to use that much so far. And our museum team had never used one either. And we have to admit, we thought it was a case of maybe just kind of getting it by the handle and quickly scanning things. Turns out it's actually a lot of work to 3D scan and post-process something and get it looking good. So our museum team have done amazing. They've bought this Artex Space Finder, they've got speed with it, and now they're digitizing 2 or 3 things a day by request. The workflows we've set up for this are quite interesting. So we receive all our digitization requests for teaching. We then obviously prioritize it depending on when it's needed. We then undertake the digitization, whether it's 3D scanning or 2D scanning. We then add them to our collection system, which I'll show you in a while, the front end. And we kind of bundle it all up into a selection. So it's a bit like adding things to a basket, and you get a shareable link. And then we send that link to the academic who's requested the items and say, here's all your items. And then list all of these tools that you're going to see today with instructions on how to use them. And here's the things you can do with it, which has worked really, really well. So for 3D scanning, a use case for this is pretty obvious, really. You know, viewing book bindings in detail, view historic artifacts, view the anatomy of an animal skeleton for biology, and also obviously the interoperability side of this as well with IIIF. So I'm going to click on this, and hopefully this will work. If I'm still connected to our VPN. Yes, I am. Excellent. So this just returns all our 3D objects, and I'm just going to click on something randomly. So Ed has helped massively with all of this from Mnemoscene. We had no real clue about anything with 3D, so he's been really, really helpful with our 3D presentation online. So we're using Universal Viewer along with IIIF manifests and GLB files to deliver that. We're using the latest Webpack version of Universal Viewer that includes Model Viewer, which is Google's sort of version of the 3D viewer. So we can sort of view models like this. As you can see, it might be a bit jumpy when I'm sharing screens. The 3D stuff tends to be a bit jerky, but in real life it's not anyway. So the use case for this is really simple. We can send these to the lecturers, and then they can either share their screen or they can embed them if they wanted in Moodle. So the students could actually see in absolute detail these items. So I'll just go back to here. So that was 3D. That was kind of like a sort of a baseline for us of interesting things that we were doing. This kind of ties in nicely with the next thing that we developed with Ed Mnemoscene. And this is an exhibit. I think we've presented it a couple of times at various groups, so some of you may have already seen this. But it's basically a storytelling tool, interactive presentations using one or more IIIF manifests or collection manifests if you want to feed it to that. Basically, for us, our staff could create their own interactive stories or interactive presentations using our collection, and embed them if they wanted in Moodle or send links to them. They could even create assignments for their students. who would have to create exhibits based on our collection stuff. So this has been a great success with our staff and students. They've absolutely loved using this. So I'm going to throw you over to Ed, who's going to run you through some of the things, and then we're going to jump back to me, and I will show you how we've kind of used it at St Andrews. So if I stop sharing, and then hopefully, Ed, you can start sharing.
Yep. Top tip: if you get jerky video on Zoom, there's an optimize for video option when you share your screen. I only just learned that. You hearing me okay? Everything coming through okay?
Yep.
Okay, so I think I'm sharing the wrong screen after saying that. Are you seeing exhibit?
Yes.
Okay, so this is exhibit.so landing page. Got a lovely custom sort of artwork here by Sophie at Mnemoscene. And then this is kind of, got some links here to the various sections of this page explaining what the project's about. The showcase shows some exhibits that St Andrews have curated using some of their content. So here's one about Jane Austen. So if we just click through this, it's going to tell a story about Jane Austen. We're going to get captions in the top left here, which we can expand and collapse. And as we click around, we also have, we can link out to other things. As we sort of click around, it's zooming in on that image. But it works with multiple images. So these are coming from various sources like the Bodleian and Library of Congress, I believe. This is using the universal viewer underneath, so we get all the kind of more information and sort of rotation and full screening options. And if we keep going, we'll reach a 3D model. So this is from the British Library's collection. It's Jane Austen's writing desk. It takes a moment to load sometimes. So as we click around here, it's going to show us, much like the image, but in 3D. It's going to show us different aspects of that model. And then, so yeah, we can combine multiple objects and multiple images, if we like, and string it all into a kind of a narrative. So if I refresh this, you'll notice there's a duplicate button here. So that is the same functionality that you get here. So if I click on, also this is a nice one, so have a quick look at this one. It's a bit more kind of, 3D going on here. So it's talking about the different aspects of this skull, etc. So if we click on try a demo exhibit, what that's doing is it's the equivalent of clicking the duplicate button on the exhibit. So it passes duplicate equals and then the ID of the exhibit that you want to duplicate. You can optionally put some rights in here. And then if I click create exhibit, it's going to create a new one for me, pre-populating it with all the content from the Jane Austen exhibit. So we can click on here, we can go in and edit these details. If we click on these, it's going to take us to the various steps of the story. So there's also the desk here. So if I say add an item, so add this one. You can also import IIIF manifests. If you import a collection, it will list all the child manifests of that collection. So if I click add item, it's going to load that in the UV. I can page through to find a part of that I'm interested in, and then write a caption with a real edge. And then if I click on that, it's going to take me to that specific point. Same for a 3D model. So I can say, you know, this handle is very interesting. And then, you know, if I were to play this back, click preview, you can preview your changes. You can also see that where it's been duplicated from. So it's almost like forking on GitHub. You can sort of follow the trail back. And there's a share option. So here's the URL if you want to share the edit screen with someone. So like a Google Doc, you can choose edit or view. If you choose the view URL, that's just the published exhibit. And this is how they're embedding in Moodle. So you can specify the size iframe that you want. And we have everything documented here. One of the interesting aspects of this is St. Andrews are using add to exhibit button in their catalog. I'm sure Andrew will talk about this in more detail, but you can add a quite simple bit of HTML to your page, pass it a URL to a IIIF manifest or a collection, and then that will then sort of create a new exhibit, importing all of those IIIF manifests for you. I think that's mostly it. I'll hand back to Andrew now.
Great. Okay, I'm going to try share my screen with that option that that you said. Optimize screen sharing. Okay. Let's see if this works. So I'm just going to briefly go through the way that we've used this. Hopefully everyone can see this screen okay. When you're browsing the collection, so I'm just going to do a quick search. Actually, I'll open that one there. So this is quite a sneak preview for everyone because this isn't going live, I think, for another week or two. In our collection, we've added, this looks slightly different to the screenshot that Ed did, just because it's in this new style that our corporate comms have set up for us. We have our records, and under use this record, there is an add to exhibit button, and that does exactly what Ed said. It goes through and it can create basically a new exhibit based on the item, the manifest of the item that you've selected there. The other options is at a selection level. So previously I talked about how the staff were given a selection with all their digitized content in. So for example here, we could basically imagine this was a shared selection given to a lecturer. They could go to use selection and click add to exhibit. And what that will do is you see, is pass the collection level manifest for that selection into exhibit. And it should, if I just add some stuff, should create the exhibit with all of the items from that collection manifest. So if I go to there's the 3 items. And then you can, obviously, you just add whichever item you want. And then you can sort of zoom in, add your annotation, move around a bit, zoom in, add your annotation, etc. So exhibit is completely free to use. Anyone can just go onto exhibit.so and start to use that. One thing, I don't think Ed mentioned this, is there's no accounts or anything like this. There's no login functionality. It was easiest that way, so we avoided any deep privacy impact assessments or that kind of thing for GDPR. So basically, it's based similar to what Google is with view and edit links that you share. So keep hold of your edit link is the very first thing to ever do when you create an exhibit. Yeah, so basically, as Ed says, basically just keep adding your items, adding annotations, and then hopefully, right, share that. It'll come up with whatever I just did then for the exhibit. One of the other ways that they did this was some lecturers. And if I click on, I've got a link here. If I click on this link, drag this over here, hopefully, was that a lecturer would load up an exhibit with all the items that they wanted students to actually create an exhibit with. So this is just an example of one, and then they would instruct the students to actually duplicate that exhibit. This description of best duplicate, blah, blah, create an exhibit. So the student might put in their actual own name there, and then the student would create the exhibit as a duplicate of the one that the lecturer had put, except there are no annotations with it. It was basically a way to load up the exhibit with all the manifests, an alternative way, I guess, to the way in which you would click on the shared selection. And this was really useful. So one of the ones I think that was used was for our museum studies course. I think they had to add annotations to an object, choose a 3D object and add annotations to it in the way with your knowledge of the item, and then they had to then repeat, I think, and then add annotations again with the way the describing aspects of the object and how you would describe it on a card in a museum, on a little description card next to the object. And I think that's how it was used. So as I say here, there's basically a blank one, and then the student could select whichever one that they needed to or wanted to describe, and then create the exhibit there. So that's exhibit. It's probably been the main thing that we've used for both some assignment work and obviously some presentation work as well. It's gone down absolutely brilliantly with staff and students. We've got a huge list of developments that we've passed to Ed that we're hoping we can sneak and get done at some point as well. So it's looking really good, and the future of this is looking really bright. What I will do, I'm going to jump back to my presentation, and hopefully I can continue. Hey, that worked. Apart from the using exhibit for students to create little presentations on our collections, the other thing that we used for assignment group work was, right, it's one of these words that I've never said out aloud, so it's either recogito or recogito. I have no idea how to pronounce it, and I'm really sorry, Raina, Simon, for messing that up. So I might say it both ways, because I've never said that out aloud before. Basically, for recogito, we staff use that to create group work or assignments, or individual assignments as well, actually, to students. So the way they would do this would be a lecturer would add a IIIF manifest to our collection or upload an image into Recogito, and then they would share that manuscript or that image with a group of students or an individual student who would then go into the software, and then they would add annotations as described, and then the lecturer would go back later and assess them. So I'm going to do a really quick demo with this, just using a couple of windows. Most of you have probably seen this years ago, so I probably won't dwell too much on this, but I'll start here. So one of the interesting ways I should have said that our art history department used this was actually they, rather than using IIIF, they actually uploaded really large images of two images side by side as one image, and asked students to add annotations to compare the two side by side. So obviously my mind's going with this and thinking, oh, maybe we could do something with Mirador and annotations and this kind of thing, and I'll get onto that in a wee while. But that was a really interesting use case that they used this for. So this window here is me as a lecturer, and I would maybe create groups to separate things out. I would then add an image or a IIIF manifest. Once I was in there, I might add a description, or I might add some notes myself, maybe, if needed. I would then share this I share this item here with the usernames that have been provided to me in advance in my classroom. So I've shared this with EA29. I would then set the assignment and let the students know that you've shared it. And then the students would go in and log in to Recogito. And then if I go to this private window, I should be in as the other person. And then the student would go to shared with me, and they would find the item that has been shared. And then either as a group or individual, depending on the task, they would go in and they would start to add the annotations. And as I said, you've probably seen this before, so I won't dwell too much, but there are various tools to add various annotations. They can transcribe or add comments, add places, or tag things as a person or event as well. The good thing about this is that there's you can comment on the comments. So basically, we had quite a lot of group discussions. So someone might add, and I know this is it's a demo one, but I wonder. Yeah, so here's one just as an example. Someone's added translation, and then someone said something, and it's all the same thing because I've done it before. But people basically, the students had conversations within these to discuss what they were annotating. The transcription tool was also used a wee bit. So we do a paleography, I think that's how you say it, a course in understanding handwriting. And so students were tasked with going and transcribing an entire page of paleography of really, really dodgy handwriting from a manuscript from like 500 years ago in Latin. So that was really interesting use of that as well. Once the students have finished the course or finished the assignment, sorry, the lecturer could go in and look at the statistics. So if students had been set, they had to do at least 10 annotations, you could quickly see the contributors there how many annotations they actually done, and obviously quantity doesn't equal quality. So they would then go actually into the document, and then they could actually see the annotations that the student had done, and also comment if they wanted to as well, and then obviously grade them. So that's how we used that tool. It's been used reasonably heavily by our students and staff. And again, I'd like to thank Rada Simon for having this available for free and offering loads of support in order for us to actually be able to use this, because there was quite a lot of GDPR hoops to jump through, and he was very, very patient with us, even though obviously it's a free thing. So thank you very much. So next up, these last two are kind of pretty standard IIIF things, so I won't dwell too much. We call it Workspace, but it's basically Mirador for now, Mirador 3 with the Image Tools plugin. And this was something we promoted to departments where they wanted to do sort of comparative work. So whether they had multiple images from our collection, multiple manuscripts, they want them side by side, or whether they had really old manuscripts and the image tools were really good at adjusting the brightness and contrast and inversing the color, I think, as well. They used quite a lot to really draw out like faded handwriting and that kind of thing. So they used that quite a lot. I'm not going to do a really long demo here. This is basically, again, I'm just going to a selection there, and this is just a random bunch of stuff. And then they would open in Workspace, and that should open it in Mirador. So at the moment, it doesn't feed in the collection manifest for that that selection into it. It's just opening like all of them as individual manifests. That was just because I don't think the collection manifest development had completed by that point. But as you can see here, they can go in and they can see things. This is actually quite a weird one. I think this obviously got annotations on it. We've also been, just as I said, we've also been sort of playing around with AI stuff on our test system as well. So we've got all sorts of bizarre annotations all over a lot of these test objects. I use the same ones as probably everyone does when they're testing things as well. So that was the extent that we used Mirador, but they have used it quite a lot, as I said, for comparative work and also for doing image adjustments on things like manuscripts. So if I just go down there, jump over to here. And finally, annotations. So this was a really interesting one, actually. So we installed a simple annotation server. Thanks, Glenn, for that. It's brilliant tool. Really easy to set up as well, thankfully. And we proxied that behind. I think we proxied it behind our single sign-on instance, or at least LDAP. Anyway, I can't remember which. And it was all protected by a group, so only certain users could add annotations. And we wanted lecturers to be able to add annotations to our records, which might help with teaching. It hasn't been used very heavily, and the main reason for that is because these are kind of our golden source records. So we had to offer advice to the lecturers to say, look, you can't do any sort of very module specific annotations to these because Joe Blogs in Australia might happen upon the record and see the annotation. So we needed to keep it quite generic when they were adding annotations, or they had to at least be mindful that the audience is the entire world and not just 10 students somewhere. So we didn't get to use that this heavily. I mean, I can quickly demo it. We're hoping what we want to do with this is actually move it away from linking the annotation set to, like, there's one set of annotations on each record, like a golden set of annotations on records, which we still want. What we would like to do is move so each individual user can have their own annotations on an item, and they can decide when they want to share them and show them. So we could basically set up students to be able to add their own annotations to our collection and then share them if need be. So that's something we're kind of hoping to get some development work on at some point, if we can catch a breath over Christmas maybe. But to do this, basically we have a button right at the bottom there where we kind of hide, it then logs you in, and then it's bog standard simple annotation that you've probably seen lots and lots of times. You would select your item, and then you would just add, oh, there's all sorts on here, but you would add your annotations, you would then save, and then what you would see in the what you see on the actual record, and I think this one's going to be a bit of a mess because it's got all sorts of things on, but what you'll see is normally is the images for this record have annotations. View them now in workspace. They would then go in and it would load up Burn 3 with the annotations tab already open. So as I said, we didn't manage to use this that much just because there's no context for any users if they just came across annotations that were about a module specific thing, which is a shame, but we are hoping to work on that if we get a chance. So that was annotation. So that was kind of basically all the tools that we kind of pieced together and got developed. Thanks to Ed for this semester for learning teaching. Said some will work better than others. The 3D scanner has gone down an absolute storm as combined with Exhibit. There's not much out there that's as easy to use as Exhibit, especially for annotating 3D objects into a nice flow. One thing I think that Ed forgot to show, which I can't remember now, that is Ed, is the scroll stuff working yet? How are we doing with the scrolly telling?
I mentioned it in the chat.
Okay, cool.
It's not really moved much further, but if you add type equals scroll to the query string, then you can sort of preview that, and instead of going horizontally, it will go vertically. So
this is just looking at different ways of presented the same content. So someone had suggested I think it's the New York Times do quite a lot of these kind of scrolly telling, I think they're called. And it was basically, this is just proof of concept at the moment. Was it scroll equals 1, Ed? Sorry.
Type equals scroll.
Sorry, type equals scroll. So this is going to change slightly in how it's going to look and things, and there's going to be various other options and things, but it's just kind of gives you an idea. So rather than being sort of left to right, almost sort of sequential, you kind of just scroll down and the item changes behind. And again, it's just proof of concept. We haven't figured out the size of the boxes and the fonts and all of that kind of thing yet, but it's just another way to actually to view the same content as well. So we're kind of working on that at the moment as well. So just back to this. So what we're doing next semester, so we're already starting to digitize for next semester. So we managed to get everything we needed digitized, but it was quite a crunch because of COVID. We weren't allowed into our buildings until the very last minute. So hopefully we've got a lot more time to digitize. We've got a deadline of 2 weeks' time, I think, to get all the digitization requests in, and then we prioritize and start the digitization process. So we should see, I would imagine, probably another easily 150 3D models added to our site by the start of next semester, probably, if not more. As you saw there, the site was now branded as collections. Our photographic collection is sort of blended into that. So hopefully that'll be launched soon, again, with migrating other things in. And as I said before, with the annotations, would quite nice to do something per user based rather than basically like golden source annotations, which is what we've got at the moment. The other big thing is really the sort of shifts that we've seen with IIIF really, and what that's managed to facilitate. So obviously there's been this kind of big technological shift with us. We had a very, very rudimentary setup really. We had JPEG images that fed into Cantaloupe. JPEG images that were from an API from a collection system that was slowly fed into Cantaloupe, which then displayed on our front end in Universal View or whatever. We've now kind of expanded all of this. So we've got this huge setup now with, I don't know, something like 10 terabytes of JPEG 2000s stored somewhere, and scripts that run every single night that look for new ones and do all sorts of fancy conversion jobs and stuff with 3D object conversions and all sorts of things like annotation servers and lots of other things. So technologically, this thing has grown absolutely huge, and which is fantastic. But I think the big thing is this shift in culture that we've seen even in the last 6 months is people are starting to realize how important digitized objects are and how cool it is that with IIIF that you can, instead of like lecturers are just so used to just showing them in person, is this ability to be able to actually zoom right into these things online. And people that have not really embraced digitizing before have absolutely loved it. And actually the ones that we thought wouldn't be embracing it at all are the ones that have actually been using it loads. And that's really good to see actually. So it has facilitated both technological and cultural shifts, I guess. And I think that is it. So I will stop sharing. And I guess I probably rattled through that. I was really worried because I didn't do any timing tests with that. So I was like, oh God, it's going to be like 17 hours long. But if anyone's got any questions for Ed and I, we're very happy to answer any.
It looks like there's one in the chat from Ben. I'd like to learn more about the using SAS behind LDAP and SSO. Is this an open source solution? So
I think the way we've got it is pretty standard. It's a pretty standard simple annotation store, and I think it's proxied. It's on Apache, or is it on Tomcat? No, it's Tomcat, and then I think we've Apache proxied it with using single sign-on or LDAP, I can't remember which, on top of that. So it's all based in the Apache configuration. So simple annotation store runs on a certain port on Tomcat. Apache proxies a certain URL to that port running on Tomcat with the addition of single sign-on and LDAP configuration options, whatever they are for Apache for that path. It's like virtual host configuration, maybe, if I remember.
Are there any other questions from folks?
Andrew, you started the presentation talking about around May, you knew that remote teaching was going to be really critical. I am impressed by the breadth and the depth of the work. Has all this happened since May? It
has, yeah. So I think it was about May time that we said, here's what we're going to do. And then it's just kind of been non-stop. So like, there's all this technology here, but like the teams in the archive and museum who haven't been able to even get into the buildings until August had to learn to 3D scan, and then had to suddenly straight away 3D scan things, digitized hundreds of items, not just 3D but 2D. So our special collections team with rare books and all sorts, and get all of that. So from a technological perspective, yeah, there's been quite a lot of work, but the teams in the library museums that have had to do all the digitizations is probably absolutely really impressive, especially with the 3D stuff. It's incredibly, it's a lot more complicated than I thought it was going to be, as I said. I thought it'd just be kind of waving a wand and away you go, but there's all sorts of post-processing and merging models and all of this kind of thing. And thankfully as well, we had Ed and Sophie at Mnemoscene have really helped with that, even though they were kind of on board to develop Exhibit with 3D. They've been really helpful with helping us out with 3D stuff as well, which has been great.
Can you, so it sounds like this was an extraordinary alignment of kind of motivation on the curatorial or the public services side, as well as on technology. But it's often the case that technology groups will develop what they think is an awesome exhibits platform, but then the uptake from the lecturers or the public services staff isn't as high. What made it, and it seems like it's worked there, what made it work in this case?
I think it's a lot of the time, and we've probably found this with COVID, is that there's not been much choice a lot of the time. So the alternatives, like, so I spoke to someone who taught the palography things, and they said that the alternative for them would be what they usually did when they were teaching, which was actually just take some images and paste them into PowerPoint, and then drag little squares with notes and boxes, and then they were said they would just have uploaded the PowerPoint for people to look at that way. Whereas with this, it's so easy to use. And I think that the key thing with these, and I'm really sorry if there's that many any lecturers here, but I think they quite like to be spoon-fed a bit as well. So it was basically, if we do it all for them, we say, just tell us what you want to digitize. And then like 3 weeks later, we send them an email with, here's the link to everything that you need to digitize, and here's really clear instructions exactly how to use this, all of these things in what context as well. So if you want to do an assignment or group work, use the Cogito. If you want to do linear presentations, use Exhibit. If you want to do a group, if you want to do assignments, maybe use Exhibit as well. So we kind of gave them all the context they needed as well. And I think for Exhibit, that was really successful as well, was how easy it is to use. So we spent quite a lot of time, and probably bashed his head against the table quite a lot when it came to the usability of the UX with Exhibit. We spent ages making it so we knew that anyone could use it. You know, you didn't need sort of to know anything about IIIF, especially for our things. So I think that was really important that we had just buttons all over our website, enabling people just to create exhibits or add selections and things. So and I think we mentioned this a few weeks ago in the Discovery for Humans chat, where we produced a document that basically had about 30 or 40 of the big IIIF collection systems out there, collection sites, and with screenshots and instructions exactly how to access the manifest URL link. So we tried to abstract out as much as we can at some point for our users, saying, actually, you know, you can use our stuff, but if you need to use elsewhere, here's a document to say this, you need to IIIF manifest URL link, and here's how you get to them, so they could use items from other places as well. So I think spoon feeding was quite helpful.
I'm just gonna give props to Sophie for the UX side of things. She's much better than I am at that stuff. So yeah.
Any other questions from anyone on the phone?
I don't know if Ed mentioned for Exhibit, I think there's a channel in the Universal Viewer Slack where we're discussing it and taking suggestions and that kind of thing as well. So if anyone wants to give it a bash and then feedback, please let us know. We're always open to suggestions for it on ways to improve. We've got, as I said, we've got a big list of things. I think some of the things that we want to do, but I need to try and find some money first, as auto playing things, so having set amount of time per annotation, so you can specify a number of seconds that each annotation stays on for, audio overlays, adding AV support, so you could add a video and then have snippets of, say, I want to play this video between seconds 20 and 1 minute 20 or something with an annotation overlay, and all of these kind of things. So it is all on the roadmap to do. We're just trying to find some time to do it.
This isn't a question, but maybe just a comment of kudos. I've been saying it in the chat, but this is just really great to see. And it's so impressive in so many ways, just how quickly it came together and how useful it is, I think, in so many contexts. And maybe just by way of example, I'll tell you that you mentioned the New York Times art history pieces that they've been doing. And I teach a class at the Pratt Institute, the library school there. And when that came out, we talked a lot about it, about how this was like a great engagement tool and how much it worked. And I kind of was saying IIIF does things like this, but it was funny that Exhibit kind of hit, I think, the week after that. And now that I've seen the scroll interaction that you've added to it, I'm going to go back to my class tonight and just kind of show them that, like, this is kind of the power of open tools, is that you know, in collections that are available online is that, you know, like it's not just the like top flight elite designers at New York Times who can put those things together. Like this power does exist for teachers and faculty and students all over the place. So really great stuff. Thank you guys for doing it and for presenting on it.
No problem. Thanks, Josh. I think a message from Mike there asking if it'll be open in future, or is it already? We're still working through that, so we're kind of working on the best way to do that with Exhibit, and we'll hopefully have more news at some point about that. We've not fully finished on that side of things yet. Oh, and Mike was saying, yeah, sorry, Mike was just saying, great job in pulling everything together so fast. It was only last week we were chatting through some of this stuff, so I was talking through, so Mike at Edinburgh University, if you don't know, is an expert in sort of transcription side of things at OCR. So I was asking about whether we could do something with that, or whether that would be useful for teaching for this semester. It didn't make the list just because the infrastructure you need for that's quite large. But it will be something we are looking at in the future.
Well, great. Thank you so much for presenting to Andrew and Ed. This is really wonderful and really just such an incredible amount of work that you and your teams have done. It's really impressive and great to see. If anyone would like to see the recording of this call and share it with folks, I will post it in the notes document. So you can access it, the recording there. Yeah, I will also actually put it in the general Slack channel for anyone who missed the meeting today. I think there will be a lot of interest in taking a look. It was really, really interesting and great to see. So again, thank you both. Thank you for everyone who was able to attend today. We really like to see everyone on the call. It's great to see your faces. And we will see you again in 2 weeks at the next community call. All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.